Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today, we're playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I'm going to be doing my overall top 10 horses. So, if you remember, or if you've been watching the channel for a while or whatever, you probably saw that I released a horse video early on in the play cycle for this game, showing the top 10 best horses in each category, because at the time I had not yet decided how I could possibly do an overall rating. But since recording that video, I have figured it out, and I found the best way, and I'll have some visuals to show you that I'll probably just have up on screen while I'm talking about it here, was to go through with every single horse, take all their stats down, put them then in order for each one, and give one of them each a ranking based on, where they landed for each individual stat, and each one of those was assigned point values, and then I determined the best horse based on the sum of those point values, if that makes sense. So it's a composite score that considers all of the factors basically, and you'll see going down, most of the ones that ended up in this top 10 are the best at something, but that's not the only thing that matters. What else matters is that as rarely as possible are they the worst in anything or even low down on that ranking, but just across the board we want them to be as high as possible in each stat. So if that all makes sense, we're going to start off with number 10. And number 10 can be found here at Malashov. So Kuttenberg, we're in the Kuttenberg region. Malashov is down at the bottom of the map here, and we're by the Horse Trader, which is located right over here. And at the Malashov Horse Trader you can find our 10th best overall horse in the game, who is Crow. So Crow is a courser type horse, so or is a courser horse, so mostly a light horse, does halfway decent in combat because it has a 22 courage stat, is not quite a war horse though, and doesn't have the carrying capacity that you'd see on a larger, heavier war horse, but is definitely pretty good for speed and stamina, which is what you want out of a courser. And so Crow definitely has pretty solid stats across the board. As far as best strengths for this one, obviously pretty decent in the stamina ranking, very good in the speed ranking, up in the top percentiles of that, and also quite good with courage. Only negative thing about Crow is that we do have a lower ranking as far as carrying capacity goes. But that being said, Crow is also a very good looking horse. I obviously am biased towards the black coat that you can find on horses in this game, and so just appearance wise I also quite like Crow. But stat wise, very, very solid horse, and like I said, find this one at Malashov. So that is the number 10 spot. Our number 9 horse can be found at the Grund Horse Trader. So we're located in the town of Grund, which you can see here on the map, and here's the Horse Trader. And this horse is this white one here, Vilantif. And now this one again falls under probably that same courser category because our biggest strengths here are stamina and speed, but we're not horrible in any of the other stuff again other than carrying capacity. So Vilantif, again, like I said, is one of the most courageous horses in the game. Definitely falls within the top 5, I believe, for that, so quite good there. Is pretty dang good for stamina, again being one of the best ones, comparatively in the game. Only weaknesses are capacity and speed. Speed is not horribly slow, still quite a bit faster than a lot of the horses in the game, but not as fast as it could possibly be. But the carrying capacity is only 188, so that's not great. But that being said, Vilantif is also a fairly good horse, and like I said, has to be, considering I gave it the number 9 spot on our list here. And if you like a white coat, it's a very attractive horse as well. So that's Vilantif, the one that takes our number 9 spot. Let's move on to the number 8 overall horse in this game. At the number 8 spot, we're back down at the Horse Trader in Malashov, so you can see where we're located again. And this one is Khartoum, our Godfather reference as far as horses go. This very, very attractive, large brown stallion-looking horse. So definitely a good-looking horse. One of the best-looking browns, I would say, in the entire game. So as far as stats on this one, again, fairly solid horse across the board. Our best strengths for Khartoum are going to be the courage, speed, and stamina stats, which were all pretty top tier. Again, like I said, there's going to be quite a few horses that are better than them, but those are all pretty solid stats. And its capacity is not that bad. At 208, it falls within, your top 10 best in the game anyway. So across the board, Khartoum is a pretty solid horse for pretty much every reason. Not that many horses in front of it in any of its stats, so no major weaknesses. It's one of the horses that just across the board actually doesn't have any areas that it falls lower than the top 10 for any of these stats. So if you like a brown horse, Khartoum is definitely a great one to go with. Not a whole lot of complaints here. And like I said, a very good looking horse as well. Stance, body, shape, color, everything. So excellent, but Khartoum takes the number 8 spot. Let's move on to number 7. The number 7 horse can also be found at the Malashov Horse Trader, and this one is Schlamhak. Schlamhak? It's probably Schlamak. And this one is our first war horse on the list, and typically what you can tell, or I should say destrier, is all the war horses will have these braided tails, which is kind of a dead giveaway for them. This one I actually quite like because it almost, not quite Clydesdale levels, but it's got the little hairy feet, which I enjoy the aesthetic of, so it's a more unique and stocky looking build. But Schlamach is definitely a very solid horse. So across the board stats, you can see our best one here is 30, which makes sense given that this is a pretty top tier war horse. Schlamach is in fact in a 3-way tie for the most courageous horse in the game. So there's not that many horses that have a 30 stat. Even my horse Attila here only has 27. So definitely a very brave horse, and that's our biggest strength with Schlamach. But outside of that, we're also pretty solid on stamina and capacity. 210 for stamina and 208 for capacity, again, are not bad. Those are some of the best stats you can find there. Our biggest weakness here is speed with only a 44. Again, that's not great, but it's definitely not as low as a lot of the horses, so it's not like this is the slowest horse out there. But keep in mind that stat will go down with the heavier tack you put on it. So horses like this, where you do have that speed where it's dropping down a little bit lower, if you want it to be fast, you're going to have to get used to taking that heavy tack off them when you're not using them for combat or anything, if you care about speed that much. And there's really only a couple times in the game, you know, races and like 1 or 2 story missions where your horse speed actually matters that much. But that being said, Schlamach is still quite good, and that's why it takes the number 7 spot. And again, looks pretty solid. I think it's a pretty solid looking horse, and definitely unique, which is always great in this game. So let's move on to number 6. And our number 6 horse can be found at the Kuttenberg Horse Trader. So you can see we're in the town of Kuttenberg, and if you zoom in, this is where the horse trader can be located. And there are only 4 horses here, and the one we're looking at for the number 6 space is Kinchem. This is a reference to a famous Hungarian racehorse from real life, probably the most prolific winner in the world, having won 54 races straight. Or at least I should say the most prolific for a winning streak. I'm not a fan of horse racing, so I have no idea if a horse has had more wins than that total in a career, but 54 sounds like a lot to me. But anyway, Kinchem here is a pretty solid looking horse, definitely a tall stance and a lean body, which is always great. And this light brown coat with the darker brown mane and tail matches very well. So if you like that lighter color, kind of what I associate with your classic American Mustang almost, not for the build, but for the color, it's a very attractive looking horse. As far as stats on this one, again, pretty solid in 2 areas where we really shine here. So stamina and speed on this horse are crazy. It has, in fact, I should point out, the highest stamina of any horse you can purchase in this game, and the highest speed. So 235 for stamina is the highest I've seen on any horse in this game. Like I said, that you can buy at any of the traders. It's possible that some random horse that spawns in somewhere has more, but 235 is really high, so this horse can run a very long time. 60 is also the fastest speed I've seen on any horse, making this one easily the fastest horse in the game. There's 2 other horses that come close, but they've got other major weaknesses that bring them down that Kinchem does not have. Our weaknesses here are capacity and courage. So capacity of 138 is pretty freaking bad. It's one of the lowest capacities I've seen out of any horse in this game, which is why this horse did not rank higher, you know, given the fact that stamina and speed are so important. The other side that you can probably see is courage. Courage of 5 is abysmal. The only problem with Kinchem is that this horse will throw you off all the time. I haven't tested all of the they're not called blinders in this game. They're the headgear on some of the horses, like the Dragon Chanfron, stuff like that. I think those things improve the courage stats, but I haven't tested them enough to really lay into that yet. But that is the only major weakness of Kinchem, because even that lower capacity, I can deal with that if I've got that crazy high speed and stamina, but that courage really brings the value down. Otherwise, Kinchem would be a much, much better horse. But as it stands, I think that the number 6 ranking is fair for the fastest horse in the game. The number 5 spot can be found at the Grund stables, so we're in the town of Grund to look at this one, and it is the unassumingly named warhorse Mark. So a pretty solid horse, definitely probably my least favorite coat color, so we've got like a light speckled grayish white. Don't really like that. Again, I do love the overall aesthetic though. The braided tail, of course, always looks cool, and the hairy feet is something I'm always a fan of. For Mark, stats are again fairly solid, which makes sense given that I ranked him at number 5, but we have a stamina of 231, which is one of the best in the game, a capacity of 358, which is one of the best in the game, a speed of 41, which is definitely not in the top 10, but still falls higher than quite a few horses in the game, and a courage of 15, which is not horrible. It's definitely not as high as quite a few horses in this game, but higher than, well, obviously the last one we looked at only had 5. So across the board, Mark has pretty solid stats, and in my opinion, the stamina stat is fairly important, but for me, what a lot of it comes down to is capacity and courage. I want the horse to be able to carry a lot, and I don't want it to buck me off, especially in combat, because that's like the one time my horse needs to keep a cool head. I do care about speed and stamina, and so they're all being ranked together, but in my personal opinion, I definitely like Mark a lot. So that is our number 5 spot. Let's move on to number 4. So at number 4, we have quite possibly my absolute favorite war horse that you can purchase in the entire game, and it is Erdl, or probably Erdl. This one can also be purchased at the Malashov stables, so that's where we are. And this one you can see in front of us here is just a very good looking horse. So we've lost the little fluffy feet and all that sort of stuff, so it looks a lot more lean. It has the braided tail, has the braided mane in fact, and just looks really nice. Of course, as I've said in previous horse videos, I am very partial to the black coat on these horses. I definitely think it's a very good look for a horse in a medieval game. And given the fact that it's the rarest, it also helps you stand out, which I quite enjoy. Stats on Erdl are pretty solid. I mentioned this in my first video. Like I said, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite horse in the game. Pretty solid stats in most ways. Our lowest one is definitely stamina. So at a stamina of 140, there are only 4 horses out of all the named horses that you can buy in the game that have a lower stamina than that. So that is Erdl's only weakness. If Erdl didn't have that low of a stamina stat, it would probably be the number 1 horse, because across the board from there, we have excellent stats. So 368 is the highest carrying capacity in the game, and as I said, that's very important to me, and so that's a great stat to have. 30 is the highest courage in the game. Like I said, there are 3 horses with a 30 courage stat, and this is one of them. So for carrying capacity and courage, you can't get higher than Erdl, which is why, like I've said, it's probably my favorite horse overall. And speed, we're not even bad. We're at 48 for speed, which places 10 horses faster than this one, but 12 horses slower than this one. So still middle of the road for speed, and that's really the only weakness other than, like I said, stamina, which is pretty bad, that this horse has. So across the board, Erdl definitely has excellent stats. And so, like I said, I think the number 4 spot, considering it's arguably my favorite looking horse in the game, seems pretty fair in my opinion. So that's number 4. Let's move on to number 3. And at number 3, I can't show you it here because I'm not in that region of the map, but even if I was, it wouldn't reflect the stats. We have the second variant of Pebbles 2, or Good Old Pebbles. So this is after you've had Pebbles and rode Pebbles for 35 kilometers, and now that's in-game riding, not fast traveling. You have to actually physically ride the horse for 35 kilometers, and once you do, you'll unlock the special stat or skill called Good Old Pebbles, and it will make Pebbles significantly better. So I've got a little graphic that I've been showing you here on screen that I prepared for it. You can pick up Pebbles at Samine at the beginning of the game, and as long as you keep it, you'll eventually get this stat. And once you do, the stats are pretty great. There's only one weakness, and it's courage. So a 12 for courage still puts Pebbles well within the range of a horse that will buck you off all the time. It's the only major weakness that Pebbles has once it's been upgraded. After that, we have a stamina of 228, capacity of 353, and a speed of 54. All of those are within the top 10. They might be within the top 5, if I'm being honest. Pebbles 2, as I like to call Good Old Pebbles, is one of the best horses you can get. And now, a lot of people have pointed out that this causes a balance problem. I agree. I think the fact that 2 of the horses you can get for free at the beginning of the game, if you keep them long enough, become some of the overall best horses in the game. I think that does kind of remove the point of even looking at other horses, but I've got some suggestions for how to fix this problem that I'm planning on talking about in a future video. So with all that being said, if you keep Pebbles and get the Good Old Pebbles perk, she, and it is a mare, becomes, in my opinion and based on the numbers, the 3rd best horse overall in the entire game. So that's number 3. Let's move on to number 2. And so at number 2, we're once again at the Kuttenberg Horse Trader, so you can see that's where we're located on the map. And the number 2 spot goes to the Pizek Lad. Just an overall really, really good horse. And you'll see why. I mean, obviously appearances on this one, it falls under a category that I like less, which is that gray coat. That being said, this one is a little bit smoother and darker, so I do like it more than a lot of the other ones, like, you know, the ones that we've looked at already, including Pebbles. I don't really like the coat on Pebbles that much. I'd say the Pizek Lad is a more attractive horse as far as coat goes. But as far as stats go, again, pretty solid across the board. One weakness, and much like Erdl, it's the stamina. Now this one's a little bit better at 194, but the rest of these stats are all very, very solid. So 338 for capacity is excellent, speed of 55 is excellent, and courage of 23 is honestly very, very good. There's not that many horses higher than that. So the Pizek Lad averages out to, in my opinion, and again, based on the numbers, be the second best horse in the game. A lot of this comes down to personal preference, what you find to personally be the most important, whether that's, you know, some people never like having to spur their horse again, so stamina for them is going to be the most important, or to rest their horse, I should say. For me, stamina is the least important stat, though. And the reason for that is because, A, with your riding or horsemanship skills, you can get the, I think it's called Just a Little More perks, which allow you to fully restore your horse's stamina, and it's got like a 90-second cooldown. So that makes most horses very, very fine as far as it goes. Plus, resting your horse takes no time at all. You stop your horse or bring it to a trot, it takes like less than 10 seconds and it's at full stamina again. So the only time it really matters is in a race, and like I've already pointed out, that doesn't happen a lot in this game. So that's why personally for me, stamina just is not that important of a stat. So across the board, the Pyzek Lad is an excellent horse, and it takes the number 2 spot. Let's move on to number 1. And at number 1, I don't have, I can't show it to you because we're not in that region of the map, but I have this graphic for you on screen. We of course have Red Herring, or Herring 2. So this would be the same thing that we already talked about with Pebbles. You can get Herring in an early mission at Trotsky Castle, and if you choose to take the horse and keep it, it actually becomes the best horse in the game. And I know that aggravates a lot of people. I'm one of those people. I think it's kind of annoying that that is the case, but it honestly is. If we follow the same scale that I've been using to rate all of the horses in the game, this one breaks out to be the best. It's tied for the second best stamina in the game with Mark from Grund, so only falling behind Kinchem from Kuttenberg. So it's at 231, the second best stamina in the entire game. As far as the capacity goes, we have 288. That puts it squarely within the top 5 for carrying capacity. So again, not many horses have better carrying capacity than that. We have a speed stat of 56, making it the 4th fastest horse in the game overall. And we have a courage stat of 14, which is not as high as it could be. You know, there are quite a few horses that are braver than that, but it still puts us squarely within the top 10, with 9 horses lower than this one, and at least one tied with it at the 14 courage stat. So honestly, Herring has not bucked me off once in the time that I've used Herring after, you know, getting the Red Herring perk, but Pebbles has a bunch of times. So I would say that the difference in 2 points there between Pebbles and Herring actually makes quite a big difference. And considering the other stats are across the board, other than carrying capacity, better for Herring, Herring is better than Pebbles. And so no weaknesses on this one, only strengths. Rates in the top 5 for most of its stats, and its lowest one still rates in the top 10. So overall, Red Herring, or Herring 2, is just the best horse that you can get in the entire game, at least as far as ones that you can legally purchase or obtain through quests. There are ones that you can steal or find, or probably random dynamic horses that you'll find with better stats, but these are the ones that, like I said, have set locations. So that is our top 10 list. So I have a graphic that I'll share for you here on the screen so you can kind of see all the numbers that I'm working with here. And none of the testing I've done with any of these horses has contradicted any of these stats. So there's no reason to believe that the visible stats for these horses are not accurate. I know a lot of people will be like, well, you can't really tell unless you test them all. But in this case, that's not really the case. They've all been very accurate, at least as far as such things can be measured. Now, like I said, I plan on at some point, you can see I have managed to get Attila as my horse. I plan on at some point covering all of the horses that you can find out in the world and steal and then make your own. I think that would be very interesting as well. If you've got any recommendations for horses that fall under that category, definitely let me know down in the comment section. But in any case, that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.